Hi, welcome to Straight Talk. I want to welcome our new viewers in our new cities to the Straight Talk family and let you know that we try to bring up lots of good issues that impact you and your family. And today we're going to talk about an issue that impacts everyone in this country, the issue of drugs and alcohol. We're going to talk about treatment, we're going to talk about prevention, and we're going to talk about what we call relapse prevention. Because once someone goes through treatment, how do we make sure they don't go back? And many of you may have been experienced with this and feel that frustration when you try to help someone and they end up back on drugs or alcohol. So we're going to hopefully learn a little bit about that. And joining me is David Roesner. Welcome.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Now, you have an amazing story. You were an addict, and
I don't know if it's amazing. It's sort of run-of-the-mill these days, but
but it's wonderful. I have to tell you, it's impressive. And we thank you for being here. So tell me a little bit about your story.
It's something I wouldn't believe myself 3 years ago. Just drinking and drugging and sort of, the world of addiction gets so small. You end up so isolated and so cut off from the world that it's tough to imagine a tomorrow, let alone 3 years later on TV. For me, my story starts with sort of shame around being gay and drinking because of that, and using alcohol as a coping mechanism, as a learned sort of way to self-medicate. And I think self-medication is certainly a part of addiction a lot of times. And in recovery, taking apart what is the shame of that and the shame that then gets piled on it from addiction. It gets really messy, and your life can change in ways that you couldn't have predicted when you're in that small space of addiction. And it's, for me, just the joy of life today and being able to paint and do what I want and do what I love and live a sober life is not something that was in the realm of my cognition. I couldn't think about anything but drinking and drugging as my identity. That was sort of a way for me to guard against other people who wanted, this society's not, we've come a long way, but in terms of, gay rights, LGBT, progressive, being accepting, it's tolerated, but it's not where it could be. And for me, my drinking and drugging was tied into that, and to realize that it's not something to be ashamed of, either of the two, and sort of moving beyond that and building a new identity as a sober person who's trying to focus my energy and my passions in productive ways. And for me, it's art, it's architecture, it's getting back to the things that spur my curiosity and creativity, things that drinking I could talk about doing, but now I get to do them. And it's been a wild ride. It's only been 3 years, but I'm excited to have a foundation now where this is my life as a sober person. It's something I couldn't have predicted.
And it certainly sounds like having both issues to have to deal with in your life, of drinking, being gay, and the lifestyle of maybe partying, going out, having a good time.
When a terrorist wants to attack your culture, they go to a bar. That's the center, that's the nexus of the culture, and sort of it's a tough thing. So for me, my recovery is rooted in finding people that are sober and gay, and that there are those communities out there was eye-opening to me and foundational in my recovery, that I didn't have to continue to be isolated. That, for me, the idea of addiction as a cage, that it's the cage you put the person in, and as soon as you're cut off from the world, you're stuck in the addiction. So finding people that I can share my life with that have the same goals and the same mindset of sobriety.
Unlike when you were drinking and drugging.
Yeah, right.
But you did have people who were the same because they were all drinking and drugging. I mean, did you find yourself in bad situations, dangerous situations?
It would, dangerous, I guess, in the sense that you don't necessarily know sometimes what drugs you're taking or what the people around you. You're just in this environment where nobody wants to deal with the mental distress of being gay sometimes in our culture, and you're sort of relieving all this energy, all this stress, all this sort of angst in a place that is all around drugs and alcohol, and it definitely gets dangerous, and it seems like a different life at this point, and it's tough to remember, sometimes.
How old were you when you started getting involved?
Well, for me, a lot of my drinking and drugging was sort of solitary. It was isolated. But in my late 20s was the peak
later
of it.
Than a lot of people.
Yeah. I think for me, I was happy with just a bottle in myself sometimes. I didn't need to be out there necessarily, and just because of the shame, because of the, I didn't want to be vulnerable. I didn't want to get out there and deal with, the reality of my life and how small it had become. So.
But it's certainly not a gay issue. I mean, my God almighty, we have so many millions of alcoholics in the United States.
Absolutely. It does disproportionately. The substance abuse among the LGBT is disproportionately high.
Large number.
It's larger than in the general population, and why that is, who's to say, but I think for me it seems to make sense that just the distress of a society that is progressing greatly. 20 years ago, like it's progressing, but it's still there. It's still an undercurrent of homophobia and it's little things, but for me and for someone who's sort of predisposed maybe to addictive behaviors, it's just a great trigger, a great excuse,
And how long, and you've been clean and sober now?
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah,
3 years.
Just starting.
And you're taking care of yourself differently than you did before.
Yeah, and trying to take care of others, I think, is important to that end. Finding other people that maybe want to change and helping them out and showing them that it's possible. That I didn't have a lot of examples, sort of, in that community of people that, wanted to live a healthy, sober lifestyle, and just sort of be an example to somebody and help them maybe see that it's possible would be one of my reasons for continuing it.
Yeah, and you're doing that, which helps you.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the more you give it away, the more you keep it for yourself.
I agree.
It helps you out.
I think so.
And that's important. It's important for you to do. It makes you feel good.
Just get out there and to be a part of a community in a way that I was only really focused on getting the next drink or the next drug. And so often you're just thinking in the now, and future, it wasn't even a possibility. It wasn't something you wanted to look at.
And we kind of stereotype this whole thing with drugs and alcohol. I think we're reaching a point where we realize it's happening everywhere.
Yeah.
But it's taken so long to realize that it's not just in the cities. It's not inner city. No. It's not the bum lying there with a bottle.
Yeah.
It doesn't discriminate. It seems to happen everywhere.
Of course, yeah. I mean, and what does that say about our culture? I think it's sort of the atomization of everybody's separate, everybody sort of gets into their own little world, and it's easy to fall off. And I think my understanding of recovery is that you need to do it with help. You need to be a part of a group of people doing it together. You need to be connected with society. If you try to pull away, that's what addiction is. It's the pulling away. It's less about whatever particular drug or drinking you were doing. It's the isolating that feeds that addiction.
And at this point, you're trying to do something else, which is your artwork.
I've always painted, and
you've always painted.
I've always painted. Drunk paintings were fewer and farther between, but I did attempt them, and it's grown in sort of.
I mean, you're a phenomenal artist. Let me just tell you. I mean, you're not just. We're going to show a few of your paintings. They're absolutely gorgeous.
I do a couple different things, and the art sort of speaks to, contemporary digital, lack of perspective sometimes. We sort of get this hazy, what does a self look like when I'm, at one point, I'm here, but with my phone and my technology, I'm everywhere at the same time. It's sort of...
But did you do art before you started drinking? I mean, it's something you've done all your life?
Yeah. It's always been a passion. I was trained as an architect, dropped out of college, finished back in recovery, and I'm starting to practice architecture.
And now you're painting. They're beautiful paintings.
Thank you.
That has to be therapeutic in itself.
It's meditative. It's a great gift, and the mythos of the artist as this tortured, drunken soul, I think, was shattered for me when I realized that I'm more productive, more creative.
Now you're a happy, sober soul.
Yeah, who actually paints instead of just talking about painting. And dramatic change, yeah.
Now, I mean, these are just two of your paintings. I mean, you probably...
I've got a couple hundred, probably.
Yeah. Do you show them?
I show them. There's a couple shows happening right now. You can see them today at City Cafe, at the Bear Hills Racket Club, at the Woodbury Wellness, and then online.
And you have them online. That's awesome. But it's, we talk about, prevention, and we're going to take a break and come back and do that. But this art is just such a wonderful thing to do, and I'm really impressed. We want to keep talking about this, but we'll take a little break.
Sure.
Okay, we're talking with David Roesner, recovering addict, alcoholic, who's now is an amazing painter and keeping himself sober and clean by painting. It's amazing. It's just wonderful. So when we come back to Straight Talk, we're going to continue talking with David and be joined by a therapist who's going to help us kind of sort out the whole treatment and aftercare part of keeping people sober and clean off of drugs. So stay with us. We're coming right back to Straight Talk.
I just need a second.
Is your weight holding you back? Are everyday tasks getting harder and harder to do?
Did you see this? Your cousin's in the hospital from a heart attack.
Really?
Health risks associated with excess weight or obesity can be serious. But you can do something about it.
I know you're worried. I found this.
Take the Your Weight Matters Challenge. Visit yourweightmatters.org, where you'll find free resources to help you take control. You can start improving your life right away. Download the free toolkit to prepare you to speak with a healthcare provider about your weight and health. Your weight does matter. Accept the challenge and take charge today. Visit yourweightmatters.org.
I had big plans. I had my career path all planned out. While I was on a combat patrol in Bakuba, Iraq, a rocket-propelled grenade took my arm off at the shoulder. When I came home, I felt alone. My family was around me, but I couldn't talk to them about what I'd seen and what I'd done. I remember just thinking, man, the way I am right now, I don't want to live. I was discharged from the Army, and I've been working with the Wounded Warrior Project since 2007. Warriors don't have to be severely wounded to be with the Wounded Warrior Project. We do have a lot of guys that have post-traumatic stress disorder. Being able to share your story, I guess it kind of helps you wrap your mind around what did happen over there. Just because you've left the military doesn't mean your life is over. Because when these guys are coming home, I'm kind of leading and training them. Instead of for combat, I'm leading and training them to heal. If I come away with anything from Wounded Warrior Project, it's them giving my life back. My name is Norby, and yes, I do suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, but I'm okay.
Hi, welcome back to Straight Talk. We're talking about addiction treatment, recovery, and relapse prevention. Something new that people don't usually talk about is how do you prevent someone from going back? All the work that they go through to get off of drugs and alcohol, and then they go back in an environment that might be negative, and they end up using again. So we're talking with David Roesner, who is in recovery and is an artist, and we've been seeing some of his work and listening to his story. Now we're joined by Rachel Markus, who is an addiction therapist. Rachel, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
No, it's great
Glad
to
to be
have
here.
you. And you've heard David's story, and you work with clients all the time. I'm
I
sure
do.
it's kind of common to hear some of those stories, but
Sure.
when you're working with someone and you get them to the point where they're finally getting clean,
Yes.
how do you work with them to take that next step of staying clean and doing the right thing so they don't relapse again?
So that's a great question. Staying clean sometimes can be harder than getting clean. It depends. But what's really challenging is the disease of addiction is a really powerful thing, and it can creep in all sorts of ways. So we'll get people to the point of being connected. They're working 12 steps. They have a sponsor. They're really kind of engrossed in recovery. And then things will happen, stressful life events, something maybe like difficult feelings that they've never had to deal with before. People's past comes up, a lot of trauma and stuff that people kind of aren't prepared to deal with. And unless they're connected and have supports in place, those kind of things can unfortunately lead people to go back to old behaviors, dealing with that kind of pain. Drugs and alcohol are kind of that quick fix. It's what the brain knows to do to make those feelings go away. So we have to give people the resources, the coping skills, the supports so that they're able to deal with things when they get tougher. Because life is, full of tough stuff. It's not, it's not just coasting along. I mean, recovery is no different. Recovery is real. It's real life. So.
And it's hard.
It is.
And it's hard.
Yeah.
And in therapy, I'm sure you talk a lot, you're working through what caused them to use drugs and alcohol.
Yes, we're addressing some of the underlying causes, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And then it must have worked. It must have had some effect. There was a reason why you went back to the drug. So
Correct.
The wiring's still there. It's still in my mind. I still have that framework for coping with whatever it is. And if I'm not careful, if I haven't replaced it with something positive, if I haven't moved on to a new focus and reason and purpose, then I'm apt to go right back to what worked. Even if it's only a temporary release, sometimes that's the motivation. I need that temporary release again. So
to make you feel good. I mean, I think addicts want to feel good.
just to
And
get
so it's a
sometimes-
matter of how do you feel good? Using drugs is destructive.
How do I feel good, and then how do I feel
You
better?
like to, you know, you like to do your art, you know. But you know, we hear so much, Rachel, about treatment. Everyone, oh, he's been in treatment 10 times, and he's failed at this, and people look at treatment like, you know, pass or fail, kind of like that. But that's not the way it is it?
Yes, it just doesn't operate like that. There is no sort of magic cure. If we just say the right things to a certain client, they'll all of a sudden be cured and they won't want to use again. It's much more of a process, and it's really about getting people connected, getting people to feel safe, so that they can open up. David spoke really well about, you know, addiction feeling like a prison. It thrives in isolation. And what we do in treatment is try to get people to sort of not feel so alone by starting to share, who am I? How do I feel? Who am I in the world? Figuring out what it is that they like. So it could be art, it could be sports, it could be, you know, a certain kind of passion, hobby, whatever, to kind of get people feeling alive again. Because addiction is one of those things that, you know, if you've ever seen someone in active addiction, they don't even look like there's any life in them. They just look like a walking, you know, shell of a person. So it's really important to kind of get people to a place where physically, you know, they're starting to get their health back, they're eating, they're sleeping, they're starting to kind of, their body's starting to heal, but also mentally and spiritually. I mean, those are components of the disease that need treatment as well. So it's a complex issue with, you know, it's a complex solution. I mean, it involves a lot of facets of work, of kind of getting reintegrated into society, into support groups. You know, it really involves a lot of work by the person. And so if somebody says treatment didn't work, well, maybe they need to look at, you know, what it is that they're not doing, which is hard for people that have addiction. They don't want to, you know.
But your explanation, it was terrific, great explanation of understanding that the person is empty.
Yeah.
And what you're doing in therapy is to try to fill them back up.
Yeah.
On all three of those elements of their life,
Correct.
physical and spiritual and
Right.
you know, and emotional for their life. And that's not easy to do.
No.
And if they don't stay the whole time or they leave, then they're going to fall back into that relapse.
Well, I know the relapse is instant gratification. That's sort of, I know what I'm going to get with that, and I don't. And the uncertainty of a world where I'm sober and I have to learn new coping skills, I have to learn new behaviors, I have to navigate a world that is complex like the addiction is, that it's scary and it's overwhelming. And to have the support is crucial, to have sort of a belief that it's possible and that it's worthwhile, to look at the stark reality of that your decision is to go back to the way you were, to sort of move forward. And
because it was comfortable.
Well,
I mean, even though it was destructive, like you said, you were familiar with it.
Yes.
You were familiar, and it's control. I can control. It's an element of control that I can, at least this one little part of my life is mine to control, and everything else you lose control over gradually until it's all gone. And so, I mean, if you're in jail, eventually you've lost all control, and dealing with a little bit of lack of control and recovery is preferable, I think, to that.
Well, we're going to continue this discussion, and we're going to meet a new friend in the third segment. We're going to talk about things people can do to stay clean when they're off, and I think that's important. So stay with us. Cool. We'll come right back. When we come back to Straight Talk, we're going to keep talking about treatment, recovery, and relapse prevention. So if you know anybody out there that's either been on drugs, been through treatment, having some trouble, this is the show to watch. So stay with us. We're coming right back to Straight Talk.
spend 15 minutes watching online videos like this one.
Brushing for 2 minutes now can save your child from severe tooth pain later. 2 minutes, twice a day. They have the time.
Most party fouls are pretty dumb. But if you decide to drink and drive underage, you could lose your license and your freedom. Underage drinking and driving. The ultimate party foul.
There's one thing you can never have sex without.
It's not something you buy.
Or something you take.
In fact, there's only one way to get it.
It has to be given to you, freely.
It's consent.
Because sex without it isn't sex.
It's rape. Consent.
If you don't get it, you don't get it. It's on us to stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
Hi, welcome back to Straight Talk. We're talking about treatment, recovery, and relapse prevention, and how do we stay clean once we get off of drugs and alcohol. We're with David Roesner and Rachel Markus, who's helping us through this process. David is in recovery, and Rachel is a therapist working with addiction, and Rachel's therapy dog is roaming around here somewhere. But the idea of finding things to help people stay clean. You love your art.
I love my art. That's just one small, I mean, for me, there's also, you know, physical activity is fundamental for me, like being active. Exercise
Is big, right?
Absolutely.
You know?
Releases endorphins, yeah. You want
so
as much of
exercise
that.
is critical for somebody in recovery.
Curiosity.
Your artwork is good for somebody who's in recovery, keeping busy, getting a job.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The spiritual part you talked about, is that?
Yeah, so drugs and alcohol fill a void. I mean, for addicts, it feels like it makes all the pain, all the anxiety, all the just discomfort in your own skin go away. So when we get in recovery, people need something to fill that void. You need something to kind of put in place of that. So for a lot of people, that can be art, that can be a hobby, that can be, but a lot of times it's also just feeling like you have a purpose, helping others, whatever it is for the individual.
So when someone
person.
comes out of treatment and they come home, they need to be involved in a lot of this stuff, from support group, AA, NA meetings, to exercise. Because a lot of parents, families are going, you know, what do we do? What do we do?
Right.
And then there's our Josie. Hi, Josie. Josie is a therapy dog.
Josie's a certified therapy dog. She's my personal dog as well. She's been to the office I work at, and what her function is as a therapy dog is essentially, I mean, allowing people to kind of feel safe, feel connected, know that like they can kind of relax. I mean, anxiety goes down around dogs a lot of times. People feel safer. And a lot of the treatment of addiction involves creating safety, creating people a space where people can really kind of get in touch with some of that harder to talk about stuff. And people are able to do that once they feel safe, once their defenses are lowered and they're feeling like they can kind of open up more. So Josie's job is to let people pet her, and she's really good at that. And that's kind of all she has to do in terms of her job.
But we hear a lot about dogs. After a terrible tragedy,
yes,
they bring a lot of dogs just because it makes people feel
It's
good.
comforting, correct.
It's comforting.
Yes.
And what you're saying is in addiction recovery, you need that comforting. You need that.
The lack of judgment, the sort of unconditional, you know, the sharing of the experience, the people that have been through it and know what it felt like to be there, and that you hear an honesty about what they're telling you, that they've been there, that they will have a way out, and that the dog is unconditional but can't talk back. To have someone who can tell their story and, you know, help you out, and I think that's a big deal.
Now, will you use Josie in therapy sessions? Is that how you would use?
So she'll come into groups and therapy sessions, and you know, sometimes people will be emotional, and she'll kind of put her head on their lap. it also is really remarkable how there'll be people that are really guarded, you know, like picture like just somebody wearing all black and makeup and just really just doesn't want anyone to get near them. And as soon as they see the dog, you know, they kind of melt and they're able to we're able to reach them in a way that we wouldn't be able to if Josie or whatever dog wasn't kind of in that space creating that comfort and sense of safety.
It's amazing when we sit there and think about, okay, we've got people in recovery, they've been through treatment, what do we need? What do they need? You know, what's the next step? But most of the time we forget about them.
Yeah.
It seems that we just, you know, somebody, oh, I went through a 28-day program. Well, now what? Well, I go to meetings. But you're looking at the holistic approach, I guess you would call it.
It's got to be a total like reintegration. The stigma of what, you know, you went through can't precede you. If you feel like you're being judged based on, you know, the actions of the past, and that's a wall to being out there in the world again. That's a problem if our society can't look at the possibility for recovery as, you know, it's not a judgment on you or who you are. And
I think we're moving forward on the whole stigma issue. I think as more people are, especially with this heroin epidemic in this country, we're finding it's in the suburbs, it's in every community, it doesn't discriminate. So I think people are accepting that, yes, it is a problem and people need help.
Yes.
But now they need to understand, as you articulated, what kind of help? What are we talking about? It's not just going away to a treatment center for 28 days.
And you're cured.
And you're cured and come home and everything's terrific. It doesn't work that way.
Right, you need supports in place. You might need a different environment. Living back with your family may be too triggering. You might need to do a halfway house or some kind of sober living environment. I mean, there's all kinds of factors to consider.
And if they need help, what do you suggest? They call?
So yeah, there's lots of great treatment centers around. I mean, you know, here in Maryland we have plenty, but they're all over the country. You just kind of have to Google it or you know, search online and
don't be afraid.
Do your research.
Take that step forward, and you can, you know, change your whole life. You know.
Absolutely.
So I congratulate you, Dave, for turning your life around and being a great artist. It's very impressive. You know, and Rachel, thank you. And having a rough time there, Josie.
Yes, settled in.
He's providing
on the job.
He's providing therapy because I just want to pet him. So I mean,
there you go.
I think that's the cool part of the dog.
Doing her job.
Thank you both. Great information, you know, for everyone. And thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks.
Today on Straight Talk, we're looking at treatment for addiction, recovery, relapse prevention, all the things we need to do to help those people. It doesn't stop just because they go to treatment. When they get home, they need a lot of support, and they need to be involved in a lot of activities, and they should get a dog. It's terrific. They're very therapeutic. So I want to thank my guest. I want to thank you for watching Straight Talk, and we will see you next time.